April 13th, 2022. And thank you, Michaela, for doing that on short notice because I only asked her to do that on Monday. So I appreciate it.
Fine, thank you.
Okay, so we are meeting again for our second in-person meeting. It still feels really strange, but it's nice to see you all in person. We're going to start our meeting tonight with a report from the chair and vice chair, and I don't have anything.
I don't have anything.
Okay. Who is our acting director tonight? Casey?
Hi, Casey Stewart. I'll be
We can't hear you. You have to talk really close to that
Casey
thing.
Stewart.
Better. Do you have a report from the director?
I do. I have an item to pass along. It's regarding the Block 67 plan development, which came before you back in 2017. That's kind of the redevelopment of the old, a portion of the post office building or block. And they came through a plan development back in 2017. They also proposed some changes to the sign ordinance, or essentially a sign package for their development, which they were coming back to the Planning Commission for to get approval for that. They have revised all their signs to comply with zoning ordinance, so they will not be coming back for approval of their sign package. We just wanted to pass that along in case there were questions and you were wondering why you hadn't seen the sign package.
Will you also introduce our new planning commissioner?
Sorry?
Will you also introduce our new planning commissioner?
Yes, I'd like to welcome Rich Tuttle. His first meeting tonight.
Welcome. What neighborhood are you? What district? Council district?
District 1.
District 1. Okay, so just welcome. It's good to meet you. Since you're sharing a mic with Adrian, whenever you do talk, you need to be really close so that it picks up on the recording, and you can turn your microphone on and off.
All right.
Just FYI. Okay, welcome aboard, and let me know if you ever have any questions. I'm happy to point you to somebody who knows the answer. All right, so we're going to begin tonight with the consent agenda. I have asked in the future that any time extensions will kind of highlight how many times they've been coming. So you can obviously discern that by reading it, but to make it a little easier, this is Red Rock's third request and the Rose Park Buddhist Temple's second request. So we have 2 time extensions and then approval of the minutes for March 23rd. And do I have a motion, or does somebody wish to make a comment about any of that?
I have one question. Let's see, I was not present at the last meeting, so I want to abstain from approving the minutes, but I do want to approve the extensions.
That is a conundrum, and you kind of have to pick the abstention. Since we have a full quorum, if we did not have a quorum, I would probably remove the minutes from the consent in that regard. If we have, well, in this case, a time extension, but any other thing on a consent agenda that any commissioner has a lot of heartburn about, I can remove it. That is the chair's prerogative. So in this case, though, unless I hear of a lot of that heart, we'll do an abstention on that for you, Andrick.
Madam Chair, I move to approve the consent agenda, including the minutes and the 2 time extensions.
I'll second that.
Okay, I have a motion from Brenda and a second from Maureen. We'll go ahead and take a vote. And Rick will not be voting on this one. I already discussed that since he was not present for any of last meeting. Andra?
Abstain?
Amy? Yes. Adrian?
Yes.
Maureen?
Yes.
Andreas?
I will abstain due to absence.
Okay, Brenda?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
And Mike, you can formally.
Abstain.
Thank you. Okay, that motion passes with 5 yes votes and 3 abstentions. Okay, we are going to have a lightning meeting tonight. Very well, not lightning, but a light meeting. We're going to move on to the public hearing portion of our agenda, and this is the Sawtooth Tag Master Plan and Zoning Amendment at approximately 16 South, 800 West. We have a zoning map amendment with case number PLN PCM 2021-01202 and a master plan amendment with case number PLN PCM 2021-01242. And our planner tonight is Katja.
Thank you very much. So this is a request and for a zoning map amendment and master
Can
plan
somebody
amendment.
close the door, please? Sorry to interrupt you, Katja.
No
Thank
problem.
you. That reverberates really hard for us.
Okay, so the master plan amendment is to change what is currently listed on the North Temple Boulevard plan, where it shows the site, and this is the site here. It's on the Euclid neighborhood, and this is South Temple and 800 West, and it's located on the corner. Oops. Okay. So the site on the North Temple Boulevard plan shows this as a transition area, and the request is to change that on the master plan to a core area. And then for the zoning map amendment is the request is to change the zoning map designation from TSA UN transition to TSA UN core. Staff's recommendation is for the planning commission to recommend denial. So the reason for the amendment, and the applicant can explain a little bit more, is to allow the development of mixed-use buildings, the tag sawtooth, with a 2-floor podium, ground floor, parking and retail, and 5 floors with approximately 186 residential units above. The proposed change is needed to allow for desired height and density, and the current zoning district, the TSA transition, allows a maximum height of 50 feet, and the proposed zoning district, the TSA UNC, allows for 75 feet. Just want to show a little bit of the current condition of the site. So, as I said, it's in the corner of South Temple and the railroad line with 800 West. A little bit more of the perspective of the railroad line. The site is surrounded by manufacturing and light industrial, as you can see on the street parallel to 800 West and the buildings adjacent to this site. And on the south, the site, which is right here, is next to the Folsom Trail that is being developed right now. So the Euclid neighborhood is divided by this railroad track. And as you can see, north of that is the TSA UN core, and south of that is the TSA UN transition. Here's where here in the south is where the Folsom Trail is. And here's the station on North Temple, the 800 West station track station. So the applicant is proposing to move the boundary, the boundary, which is the railroad tracks here for the zoning district, to where Folsom, the Folsom Trail is. So, but at this point, it would be just for that site. And the applicant feels that, the Folsom Trail provides enough buffering from the proposed project to the surrounding single-family neighborhood. And here's where it starts being more of a single-family residential, whereas here in this area is more of commercial and industrial area. So as far as the zoning requirements, they're very similar between the core area, the core zoning district and the transition. There's three requirements that are a little bit more different than, which is height. Like I said, the transition is 50 feet maximum, and the core area is the maximum of 75 feet. Parking, which the transition zoning district, it requires 50% of required, what's required on the land use table of the parking chapter. And in the core zoning district, there's no space requirement. And then open space. As far as land use, here's a table where it shows where there's a discrepancy between all the land uses that are permitted and conditional use. And the proposed land use for the project is a permitted land use in both the TSA-UN transition and the TSA-UN core. So the findings for the zoning map amendment is that the major, like just repeating what I've just said, there's very little difference on what is required as far as the zoning districts for zoning requirement. Also, the land uses are similar of what is permitted in conditional use in both zoning districts. And, just that what the applicant is proposing is allowed in both zoning districts. As far as the master plans, there are three relevant master plans. Plan Salt Lake, that's the overall plan, the housing plan, and the North Temple Boulevard plan, which is more specific to this area. And in the North Temple Boulevard plan, it talks a lot about the compatibility of the neighborhood. And so it proposes that the higher heights be closer to the transit station, and then it tears down a little bit to the transition, and then it's the stable area, which is more the single-family homes. So, and in the plan, it talks about how on the 800 West Station area, there will be, that compatibility is achieved by having three distinct areas: the core, taller buildings, transition, not as tall, and then the stable areas, which is the lower densities. So for the master plan, our findings is that the master plan policies can be achieved through the current zoning. And that the North Temple Boulevard plan is clear that there's no need, there is a need for a buffer between the core and the stable areas, and that is the transition area where the site is. So our recommendation is based on the findings listed on the staff report, and it's the planning staff's opinion that the project does not meet the applicable standards, and therefore recommends that the Planning Commission recommends denial to the City Council. Now, is there any questions that I can answer about this project?
Commissioners, any questions for staff at this time?
I have a question. Are we on? Okay, my question is, can there are a couple of goals that they're trying to meet by getting the zoning changed, right? Like maybe larger units in the building and
Right.
more parking available, that kind of stuff. So, but those aren't necessarily achieved through this zoning change that's requested. But is there another way that they could get additional height through like design review or some other process that would ensure that the units are larger or the parking is provided and that kind of stuff?
You know, parking is up to the applicant, and
Right.
the applicant is actually proposing additional parking than what is required. As far as the height, there is a design review, and can you remind me how much more height you can get with design review?
In the current zoning?
I apologize, I can't.
So it's actually a planned development process that you could
Oh.
achieve a little bit of extra height in some of these districts, but it's pretty minimal. So let me find out that exact height. You probably can't hear me. I need to speak into the mic.
It's just that they said what I read was that they wanted maybe to change the zoning so they could build a taller building, so they could have 3-bedroom units, right? And they can provide more parking, but the building needs to be taller in order for them to do that
Right.
financially. So I just wondered if there was another way, but there's no way for this zoning to achieve those goals, kind of, or to make sure that those goals happen? Because it also sounded like from the public comment that that's what the community councils wanted too, those kind of specific things. So I just wonder if there's another mechanism for them to increase the height or build a larger building in the existing zoning.
Right. There really isn't. Through the plan development process, they could ask for an additional 5 feet, but they're going to be bound by what typically just by what the code allows in this zone. There isn't much flexibility beyond that.
As far as the planning commission level, there's not for example, the city council could ask for a development agreement that, makes sure that those items that are, incentives for that the applicant is proposing can be implemented, and will be implemented. But at this level, we can only use the standards for zoning amendment in the zoning ordinance.
Thanks, Katja. Any other questions for staff at this time? Go ahead, Andrea.
Yeah, I'm just trying to understand the motivation again for recommending.
Will you make sure you speak into your microphone? This is for the recording, so.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm just trying to understand a little better the rationale, because it seems like I'm looking at the sort of goals of the master plan, and it seems like, increasing density, particularly around this expensive piece of infrastructure we've already put in. The project in principle would seem to be consistent with this. And I'm wondering whether the existing zoning is sort of not economically viable to get the sort of projects we want that use that infrastructure. And I'm just wondering, the economics behind the sort of recommendation.
The recommendation was based on what the master plan, actually proposes, and the boundary for the master plan was something that was agreed by the city council in 2010. So the recommendation does not take so much in consideration what the economic, situation of what the proposal is.
Okay, thank you, Katja.
I
All right.
might, go ahead.
What?
I might add a little bit to that.
Oh, I was like, I was trying to stare at you.
yeah.
Go ahead, Casey.
When those core areas and transition areas and stable areas were established in the master plan, it was anticipated that the core area would contain that extra density, and the transition area would serve as a buffer. And this is in the transition area and right on the edge of that railroad line, which is a clear physical buffer. So maintaining that buffer is crucial in allowing that the transition from the core area down to the more stable neighborhoods. So allowing for extra density in that transition area is kind of goes against the intent there, which is why the recommendation is to essentially hold what's there. That was adopted in 2010, and Planning Division feels that's still appropriate for that area.
Okay, thank you, Casey. All right, we have an applicant of Jordan Atkins and Jake Billeteri. Are you both here? If you would step up to the table and make sure you state your names in the microphone for the recording. And then do you have a presentation you need Katja to help you get plugged in there?
Help me with a presentation.
Okay.
Help us because,
Yeah, that's how I brought it.
Okay, well, David gets you set up if you guys want to state your name for the record, and then we'll get that presentation up. Once you do that, you get started. You'll have up to 10 minutes. You don't need to take that whole time, but it's yours to do what you need to.
To kick it off, my name's Jordan Atkin.
And my name's Jacob Billeteri.
Thank you. Full house, thank you. Hopefully it's a short meeting. This presentation was actually quite difficult for us. We have had the fortunate opportunity to be developing in Salt Lake City since 2016, and in that time we've brought 12 proposals before this body, of which this is the first one that we decided to come forward with the negative recommendation. The main reason for that is we're so adamantly opposed of staff's assertion that this is not consistent with both the master plan and the area. And I think that, honestly, it's evident within the staff report that they have differing opinions as they kind of bounce back and forth. I think one of the little, let's see this. So this is the map that was within the staff report as well. The site is approximately 800 feet away from a fixed rail line on North Temple and 8th West. It's a relatively flat, it's a nice site. It's relatively flat, square, sits vacant, is directly adjacent to an industrial freight line to the north, a quite expensive and great city amenity to the south of the Folsom Trail. To the east, we have a large tract of land owned by the city that abuts the freeway that obscures the view of downtown. And to the west, which is also unique, is we only have two neighbors. So we found that this site really could be asked more from. Like, this is something where we are displacing no business, we're not displacing any people. It had been openly marketed for quite a while before we were asked to take a run at it, and with the Folsom Trail finally getting going, we thought it would be a great opportunity. We attempt to keep tabs on the Planning Commission and the City Council, and an issue that we continue to hear about is the unit configuration of what's being built, primarily studios and one bedrooms. That was brought up again and again in our ongoing meetings with the local community councils as well. The other issue is obviously parking, specifically in these zones that don't mandate a large amount of parking, and developers continue to put what seems, at odds with what the community's asking for. So when we considered what could be built under the current zone and what the rezone would allow us to do, we thought we could achieve both of those main objectives that we heard from the community for larger units and more parking. And I'll add that we would welcome a development agreement that would bind us to at least meeting the parking requirements within the zone that we're leaving. And now we're going from what would be about 75 stalls to about 145, which is, parking is about $30,000 a stall, so it's not insignificant. There's a lot of talk about what's the right spot for the transition, and this idea about buffering from this core area to the stable area. And you can see on this map that you don't get to a stable area until, at least to the south, where we're on the south side of the core, until after you cross the freeway. So we're wondering, what are we transitioning from? We don't know. At the core of our proposal is we're asking to increase the height, which is not an additional story of residence as far as we're concerned, but just an additional floor of parking. It also, and I wish I had a diagram, but we're pulling off of our the edge against Folsom Trail to achieve more units both on the first level and the second level in an effort to get more eyes on that trail and hopefully spark some engagement with it. And that was my train of thought. We think we're going to be able to achieve 5 levels of residence regardless. It just gives us a little bit more there. And I think that is the majority of my comments. And we're happy to answer any questions that you guys have.
Okay, thank you, Jordan. Commissioners, any question for the applicant right now?
If you're willing to do a development agreement, about what percentage of units would you see being a 2 or 3 bedroom, or do you have any notion of that?
Oh, I can get this one. It would be about a quarter. So in total, adding the additional height would allow us to achieve, I think, somewhere in the ballpark of 30 to 40 additional units. And of those additional units, we would actually go from 20 2-bedroom units to 53.
Okay. And I have a question for you. How big is your site? This
0.88.
Huh? How many?
0.88. I don't know what that works out to in feet, but 36,000.
I was out there. It looks much bigger than that. And 30,000?
I think it's about 36,000 square feet.
Okay.
It kind of runs together with the trail in a way that I think makes
Well,
it
that's the
exceedingly
other
long.
question I was going to ask you, which is the trail itself is not that wide, but there's a very wide right-of-way for the trail.
Our
So
understanding
your
is-
property comes right up to the right-of-way. Is that right?
Yeah, and we understand that to be a 90-foot public easement.
So I just want to point out that it's 90 feet wide. So, okay, thank you.
Yeah, I might not have mentioned this, but the other thing, and we had a difficult time with trying to articulate this because of how the zoning ordinances are written, but the second level of parking, what it also does is it gets the first level of residential units above the rail. We just kind of in the models we envisioned like looking out if you're in that first level of residential units and you're looking out at the side of a train, compared to if we can just go up just that 12 extra feet on our podium, you can then you don't have to have that experience.
So are you anticipating retail on the ground floor?
We are actively working with community members to try to secure retail tenants for it.
Thank you.
Any other questions, commissioners? Okay, with that, you guys hang tight. We will open the public comment period. And is there anyone here that wishes to speak? We have this lectern set up for you. If you would state your name for the record, and then you will have 2 minutes.
Thank you. My name is Nigel Swaby. I live in the area. I'm also the chair of the Fair Park Community Council. I'm speaking independently of them, but I can tell you that there's been no opposition to this project and to this rezone ask. I've been involved with, I served on a board with the previous owner of this property, and I know what was originally planned for it. And like Jordan said, this is a unique property. It's already buffered. I think of it kind of as an island with the Folsom Trail to the south of it and the railroad tracks to the north. So there's not really a need for a transition. It's already been naturally transitioned. I see it as the key to the Folsom Trail, and this rezone request will allow the developer more flexibility to be able to provide either retail or some amenities on that ground floor that face the trail and even the second floor. And we think as a community that it's very important. And to support the desire or the statement about more units, that's something that I hear in my community all the time, and parking is always a concern. To give you an idea, I visited another project on North Temple that's been built. It was opened up earlier this year, and at inception, it was 40% occupied. And these are micro units. It's 100% occupied. So the demand for housing is there. The demand for family size housing is there. And so I urge you to consider the unique situation of this property, what it is and where it stands, and support the applicant in this decision.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Swaby. Anyone else in attendance that wishes to speak? Okay, Wayne, did we get any emails at public.comments@slcgov.com?
Nope, we have not received any emails. You did get, I believe, a comment that was put in your Dropbox, but no emails have come in.
Yes. Okay. Seeing none, no further comments, I will close the public comment period and bring it back to the commission. At this time, if you have questions for staff or applicant, you can pose them. Otherwise, we can enter into our discussion. Go ahead, Andrea.
So I think that this is an opportunity to add density when we don't have neighborhood opposition. I mean, so many times when there's, any demand for density, we get a letter from the community council and many other people. And I love the idea of having Jordan River Trail more connected because I run over there all the time, and that particular part of the trail is not populated. It's not, it's not dangerous except that it's not populated. So I love the idea of a few more people over there. Maybe this planning staff could tell me what a stable neighborhood is, because I guess I have to be, that term in particular just sets off alarm bells in my mind in terms of the first time I heard that term was in the context of HOLC redlining maps. And so I'm just, what exactly is a stable neighborhood?
A stable neighborhood is one that there's not anticipated to be much change. It's established itself. Typically residential areas, single family, low density residential. I'm trying to find that in the master plan here where it talks about, on page 52 of the North Temple Boulevard master plan, it talks about the 800 West stable area. Zoning regulations should be aimed at maintaining the existing development characteristics while allowing appropriately scaled residential infill development. Minor changes happen within the existing development pattern and are consistent with the overall scale of the surrounding structures. So, yeah, there you go.
I think one could really take a second look at that existing light manufacturing, and if that is something 12 years later that we still want to see as stable there, or if we feel like the vision and the needs are a little different from light manufacturing. I think that might be an appropriate thing to consider. Go ahead, I didn't mean to cut you off.
Yeah. Oh, are you going?
Go ahead, Amy, you first, and
Okay.
then we'll do John.
What is the zoning for that? On this map that he was showing that has the core area as red and then yellow for transition and then blue for kind of stable, what is south of 100 South?
Yeah, Katja, if you could
Or-
come back up, please.
So if you want to, can you put that drawing back? So
Okay, that's
So
bigger than the one I
they-
can see.
yeah, so that is, the red is the core area. The
That's
yellow is the
yeah.
transition area, and then the blue is the stable area.
And it doesn't go back to blue south of the core area until past the freeway?
Correct?
Yeah. And where the cursor is right now is where this subject property is.
Yes.
Is the zoning, oh, I guess I could just go back and look. Because it looks to me, I drove over there today too, and it looks to me on the map like there are residences on the south half of that block where their property is. Those are residences. And then south of First South are residences, right?
Yes.
Is that-
Yes, so the
right?
further south you get to Euclid, that neighborhood, it's more a single-family residential area. But it is, zone TSA UNT, which will, has the possibility of going to 50 feet high.
John?
Yeah, so I just kind of wanted to jump in, and I've got comments, and then I guess we can get some answers if the staff wants to jump in. But, I've walked this site several times over the past few years, and I mean, it's really just a lot of grassy fields, old industrial areas that are just kind of have things stacked around. I feel like this is an opportunity where you can have an engaged trail with, eyes on the street, eyes on the trail, and make it a safer trail for people to navigate. It gives you two means of public transportation, bicycle lanes where you can take the trail wherever you need to go, plus be able to walk to a transit stop. For me, I get that there's a master plan, and it's kind of a 10-year-old master plan, and it was idealized at the time, but no one's really developed in that pattern up till now because there's still empty lots, there's still industrial elements that are just piling up a lot of junk, really. And so I think for this area to develop the way that I think the trail could be an incredible place for people to go and engage and have a boulevard there where you can ride a bike, you can stop and get a cup of coffee, whatever you wanted to do. But it's part of a new way of thinking about transitioning through our cities. You need development to happen along the trail for that to happen. And I think kind of pushing back against we're really struggling with density right now and not having enough housing. And I feel like we're going the wrong direction on this, where we're trying to restrict what can happen, and everybody's just going to keep building micro units unless we go taller and add more density in our city. Because micro units make more money because you can rent more units. And so to get bigger units, we're going to need more space to fill that space in. And so that's my opinion on this. I think we're in a huge transition period in our city, and to just base this on something that's 10 years old, is really difficult for me. So that's my 2 cents.
Okay. I think this is probably one of the most current master plans out there, though. So, and the other ones are a heck of a lot older.
I have a question.
Yeah.
So on the 800 west frontage of your property, is the property line where the current fence is? Or is there a setback?
I can't answer definitively. I don't know.
Because if it's a setback, I would like to retain that setback and not see you come in a year and say, I need all of that land and take up all that setback, because that setback on 800, if it's actually the property line, and that's fine, you're not going to go over it anyway. But we have a lot of instances where people are, just grabbing a little bit more, 20 more feet of land like that, and coming back in and saying, oh, well, we're not going to do that. So I would like to see that setback, if it is one. So I will try to do a little investigation now, but if you come back with that, you're not going to get it.
Sure. Yeah, I'll send you our survey. I don't know off the top of my head.
So I have a procedural question, Paul. In the Dropbox, we have 3 versions of this motion. We have one that combines them.
You have 3 versions of what?
The motions. So do these need to be separate, or can they be handled in one motion together?
With legislative type issues, it's generally not too concerning to me if you do one motion.
Okay. We just had 3 choices, and I didn't know which one was preferred.
I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead, Andres.
For staff, did we hear any comments back from neighbors in the area and or the local community council in the area?
We send notices to the Poplar Grove and the downtown community councils, and then we also had an online meeting with the Fair Park Community Council. We heard back from the Poplar Grove and the Fair Park, as you heard from the chairman. But from the Poplar Grove Community Council, the issues were, just parking, more, the unit mixes to have more 2 and 3 bedrooms. And let me see if there were some, there were no objections. There were just comments on the project itself.
Gotcha, thank you.
Madam Chairman, do we need to, if we are also going to recommend that the City Council pursue a development agreement with this team, do we put that in the motion, or do you have any idea what we should do about that?
Paul, please weigh in.
You certainly could. You could recommend that in your motion.
I feel like in the past, there's been the hybrid, where very few times has that actually been attached to a motion and a recommendation, but that it comes up then when the planner is.
Yeah, often if that is going to be the direction, sometimes the planner will recommend that. There's nothing prohibiting the planning commission from doing that on their own.
Okay.
If you do that, just provide some good guidance as to what you would like to see in that, so the City Council isn't guessing.
Yeah, so tonight we are just making a recommendation to the City Council on both both amendments for the master plan amendment and the zoning map amendment. If anyone is ready to make a motion, or if.
Well, I just wanted to discuss that topic just for 1 second.
Okay.
Because I do think my one concern is that the trail will become more of an alley to the building, and I don't want that to happen.
Would become more what?
Of an alleyway, so it feels like a gravel alley versus a trail that is meant to be used for pedestrians. And so I do think this is a very unique site, and a development agreement may be something that would make the most sense in this scenario, just because you're running into 3 different sides of the property.
John,
that
would
are-
you like to make a motion and include that? Since you articulated that so well?
I
You can
don't
take
have
the first motion that combines both of the case numbers.
Which one here? Okay, based on the information in the staff report, the information presented, and the input received during the public hearing, I move that the Planning Commission forward a, I guess, a positive recommendation to the City Council to approve PLN PCM 2021-01242 and PLN PCM 2021-01202. With the
Recommendation.
with the recommendation of a planned or development agreement. Sorry, it's hard when it's not written down.
That's okay.
With the development agreement, basically stipulating what conditions happen around the perimeter of the site concerning the trail, the adjacent roads, and the railway.
And unit configurations?
And that the unit configurations are at least 25% or, 2 to 3 bedroom units. I think that's a good.
I'll second that.
Okay.
That was
I have a motion from John and a second from Mike. Any discussion to that?
Can I make a friendly amendment?
You can do that.
Include the parking, because that was the other concern of the community council, that increased height would also allow for the additional parking.
John,
Yes, I think,
you accept that?
yeah, I would accept
Okay,
that.
so we have
That was the one that the developers said.
we have an accepted friendly amendment by John. So any further discussion? Are we ready for a vote?
Okay. Before we vote,
Yes.
Just on the additional parking, I do get concerned when we just make it easier and easier for all these cars to be in these neighborhoods we want to be high density. I mean, it just, like, we're in downtown Salt Lake, and it's really easy to park here. And it means nobody ever gets out of their cars. And that seems really inconsistent with our master plan, where we're trying to encourage other forms of transit. I don't know, I'm just concerned about the development agreement adding, but we have to make it super easy for everybody to park anytime they want to go anywhere near there. I get a little concerned.
I would agree with that. I think the only thing I would say about it is that I do believe in the buffer between the train and that floor. And so I think if that's how we get that buffer, I'm with you. I'm usually against parking, but when you're right against a train track and you live next to it, I don't think you want your window outside next to the train. So that's why I would accept that, but.
But wouldn't they just
And
address
ultimately-
that as part of the design? I mean, I would,
Yeah,
I'm all for the motion except the parking.
Okay, we don't have to include the parking then.
Are you rescinding your approval of the friendly amendment?
Yes, 'cause,
Okay.
yeah, based on what I just
Okay.
stated. So.
And I believe we had a comment about,
sorry, yeah, I was going to say if that's the direction we're going to go, then some more specificity as to how much parking, but since that friendly amendment has been pulled, Commissioner Burrows, if you want, you can make a substitute motion.
yes. Okay. Okay, then, let's go ahead and take a vote. Maureen,
Yes.
Mike,
Yes.
Andreas,
I'll vote yes.
Brenda,
Yes.
Amy,
Yes.
Rick, John,
Yes.
Andra,
Yes.
and Adrian.
Yes.
Okay, that motion passes unanimously. Good luck. Your next stop is the City Council.
Thank you very much.
All right, thank you all. That actually concludes our agenda tonight. I'm sure next month will be nothing like this, so just prepare yourselves. With that, I will say we are adjourned. Thank you all.